everybody. Today I am here talking with Anna Rose Johnson, who is an author of historical fiction, middle grade books. Um, her first book is The Star That Always Stays. Her second book is The Luminous Life of Lucy Landry, and I am sure that there's more to come that we're going to talk about. So thank you for being here today, Anna Rose.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Well, yeah, thanks again for being here. What are some fun facts about you that you like to share with readers?
Yeah, one kind of fun fact is that I grow flowers every summer. I have a small cut flower garden, and I grow cosmos and zinnias and snapdragons and sunflowers. And one of my favorites to grow would be nasturtiums. I save the seeds each year, and I actually just saved this week 400 seeds and put them away for to be planted next spring. So that's very fun. Um, the picture, like my bio picture that I use for everything, has the sunflowers that I grew one year in the background. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah,
And
that's awesome.
another fun fact about me is my name. My name is actually pronounced Anna, like in Frozen. And when my parents were trying to, decide what to name me, they couldn't decide between Anna and Olivia. And so they put the two names in a hat, and everyone in the family was going to draw out one of the names, and every single person drew Anna. So that's what they went with. And then later on, when I was researching my great grandmother Norvia, who inspired The Star That Always Stays, I learned that the name on her original birth record was actually Anna Norvia, and no one had known that, so that was quite cool.
Yeah, that is cool. I didn't know. I didn't know that. I knew that you grew flowers, but I didn't know that about your name. So that's really, I like the names out of a hat idea. When all else fails, pull names out of a hat.
Yeah.
So I briefly introduced your books. I was gonna hold up my copy of The Star That Always Stays, but it looks like my video is frozen, so I won't do that at the minute. But can you tell us some about the books that you've published so far?
Yeah. So my first book is The Star That Always Stays, and it's the story of 14-year-old Norvia, who moves from Beaver Island to Boyne City in 1914. And she has to contend with a new school, a first crush, and a blended family. But she also has to keep secret her parents' divorce and her Ojibwe heritage. And that book came out in 2022. And my second book is The Luminous Life of Lucy Landry, and that's the story of Lucy, who is a spirited French Ojibwe orphan, and she's sent to live on Lake Superior with a mysterious family of lighthouse keepers, and she's trying to find the legendary necklace that her father spent his life seeking, and that came out in March of this year.
Awesome. Yeah, I've read both of these books. They're both a lot of fun. They're different, but they also have a lot in common. I One thing that I especially enjoyed about The Star That Always Stays is that it's kind of similar to my grandpa's experience in some way because he also came from a family where his parents were divorced, which was not common at the time, and his mom was German, and growing up right after World War One with a German parent was a different but also similar type of like sort of wanting to hide his heritage and feeling like he wasn't allowed to speak German outside the house and that kind of thing. So for my family, it resonated with us, and I thought that was cool. Um,
Yeah, that's really cool.
so we touched on this a little bit, and that kind of flows right into my next question. But what inspired The Star That Always Stays? Can you tell us some about your own family heritage that you're writing based off of?
Yeah, so I first got the idea for the book when I was doing genealogy research about my great grandmother. Um, and the events that were happening in her life when she was about 14. So she was starting high school while dealing with her parents' divorce, and then her mother remarried, and it was the beginning of World War One in Europe. And it made me think that this could be a really compelling middle grade novel because of those coming of age elements, and the fact that she was of Ojibwe and French descent added kind of an interesting layer that isn't featured that often in middle grade fiction. Because I'd always had, a big interest in writing for children going back to, when I was a child, and that was just always the age group that I was drawn to write for. And so when I realized that all this was going on in my great grandmother's life at the same time, I'm like, I think there could be a story here. And when I was a kid, one of my favorite series to read was the Rebecca series by Jacqueline Denbar Green, which was one of the American Girl series. And those books were set in 1914. And I thought that that was such a fun time period, and I hadn't known much about it. And that was one of the reasons why I was prompted to, to write the book set in that year. That kind of was the catalyst for that. So that was how it got started.
Yeah, I love that you actually did write this book about your family history, because I hear from so many people who tell me these interesting stories about their family history, and they're always like, this sounds like it could be a good book, but then so rarely does it actually end up being a book at all, much less a book that is published and available to the wider public. So I think it's really cool that you not only had that idea, but that you followed through on it, and that you wrote the book, and that you got it published so that all of us can read it, and we can also learn about the interesting experiences that your family had, and connect with those characters that are based on real people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what was that process of going from having your book idea, wanting to be an author, to having now 2 published books?
Yeah. So I wanted to be an author from the time when I was about 6 or 7 years old. That was just always my dream, and I wrote a lot as a kid. I always wrote historical stories, even before I knew that you probably should research them a little bit. And I continued to write as a teenager, but I knew deep down that I wasn't quite ready to pursue publication. And a while back I found a quote from my journal when I was 14, and I wrote that, my writing isn't polished yet, but as long as I just keep writing on a regular basis, then someday I think I'll get published. So yeah, I wrote the first draft of The Star That Always Stays when I was 16. And by the time I was graduating high school, I was really starting to work harder on my writing craft, with the goal of publication, in the near future. And it was not that long afterward that I began looking for an agent, and was able to find one. And it took a little bit longer for us to find a publisher for The Star That Always Stays, but we did, and we got the book deal from Holiday House, and that has just been such an incredible experience. And so yeah, that was kind of an abbreviated version of my publishing journey.
Yeah, I always think it's interesting to learn about your publishing journey, because I know there was so much persistence involved and patience involved, and so much editing on the story, a lot of big changes to the story. So the fact that that you kept going, and that we now have this really cool book that has been published for a while now, like, that's just really neat. That you made it all the way through that journey to having the physical book ready for us to read and ready for us to buy. And I do want to talk about more publishing stuff, and about your second book, but first, can we just talk about Dicta for a minute? Because you know me, and you know that Dicta is my favorite. So can you please tell our people, our viewers, who Dicta is, and why she's the best?
Well, I'm really glad that you like Dicta. She was one of my very favorite characters to write of all time, not just in The Star That Always Stays. But she's the younger sister in that story, Norvia's 8-year-old sister, and she has a lot of opinions, and she loves to talk, and yeah, she's just a very funny character. So I'm really glad that other readers have liked her and connected with her. Um, it was interesting writing her because I didn't know that much about the real life Dicta, who was my great great aunt. When I wrote her character initially, didn't know that much about her, and then later on, after I'd written the first couple of drafts, I found her high school yearbook and some notes that she'd written, like on the backs of photographs, and I found out some other things about her, and I was kind of amazed at how um, similar she was, the real life Dicta, to the way I had written her, and so I felt like I got her character right.
Oh, that makes me really happy. I really like to think that that the real life Dicta, especially at that age, was like you wrote her. I just really enjoy well written child characters. I think so many child characters can either feel like they're way too old for the age they're supposed to be, or they're way too young for the age they're supposed to be. So when there's a well balanced character who really feels like a kid, I always really enjoy that. And Dicta makes me laugh, and her dynamics with the other characters are great. So I've been lobbying for a Dicta book for a while, and I know I'm not the only one. So we'll see if that ever happens or not. But
That would be really cool.
yeah, she is certainly a character with fans. I think she would like to know that she has a fan club, but probably nobody should
Yeah,
tell her because we'd never hear the end of it.
yeah, probably.
So you published *The Star That Always Stays* as your debut novel, and then *The Luminous Life of Lucy Landry* came along. So what was it like to go from first book to second book? How was that experience different? How did you find that it was a different to have a second novel from a first novel, or maybe it wasn't as different?
Hmm. It was quite an interesting experience because I found that going through the publishing process the first time was pretty overwhelming because there were so many things to keep track of, to figure out, how to do different marketing things, and um, doing a launch team, and it was a little bit hectic doing that part of it. And so then releasing Lucy earlier this year, um, it was different. Even though I was doing, a lot of marketing and managing another launch team, and trying to do even more things like offering some pre-order goodies and stuff like that. Um, I felt better about it just in general because I knew this time what to expect, and that helped a lot. I definitely did not feel quite so overwhelmed, and I enjoyed it a lot, just in general, because it was easier to get some of the marketing off the ground with Lucy because I was, more established with my audience at that point, and that made it easier to get the ball rolling. So I would say the actual publishing process from like a marketing standpoint was a lot easier. I also knew more what to expect on the editing side as well. But it was interesting because doing the edit rounds for Lucy, I had a lot less time than with The Star That Always Stays, and I think that's pretty typical. Like that, you know, writers tend to spend more time on their first book because they just have more time, and then when you're under contract for the second book, you do not have as much time to go through it and do edit rounds, and
Right.
um, so it was I had less time with Lucy, so that was a little bit stressful. But in the end, yeah, I think it went really well.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I think sometimes so much pressure can be put on your debut novel, and then it almost seems like, well, everything after that is just not the debut novel. So that it was like easier in a lot of ways makes sense. That you knew more what to expect, that you were more prepared for the marketing things. That makes a lot of sense. And I think the first book can just be the foundational one in a lot of ways, but yeah, I have heard that from other authors that the editing deadlines are even tighter for the second book, so I'm sure that was challenging. But
Yeah,
but yeah, now you're a multi-published author, so that's a cool thing to be able to say.
yeah, it is. It's really been just a wonderful experience.
Speaking of experience, what kind of experience can readers expect when they read your books? What does it feel like to read an Honor Rose Johnson book? What is the kind of takeaway going to be?
Yeah, I'm always hoping to give readers the same kind of experience that I've loved from books like Anne of Green Gables and Little Women, and books by Elizabeth Enright or Maud Hart Lovelace. Just sort of quiet, classic, comforting sort of books. And I love that I'm able to tell those kinds of stories while also including, heroines of Ojibwe descent. I just think it's really cool, to give something a little bit different in this style of story that so many people love. So that's quite cool, and I really want to just, with every one of my books, leave readers with joy and feeling uplifted at the end of the story. That's, I would say, one of my major goals in all my books is to just have it be a really uplifting, heartfelt family story. So that's what I think that readers can expect.
Yeah, and I think your books do a very good job of that. And I'm glad you brought in family at the end, because I think a big part of what does produce that uplifting, heartwarming sensation is the family relationships, and how in both of your published books so far, family is such a big theme, and the characters connecting with their families. With Norvia, it's the family she was born into. With Lucy, it's a family that she is just coming into. So different between the two books, but it just gives very much that feeling of, I guess, feeling at home by the end of the book, which is always really nice. I think a lot of readers are looking for that classic feeling book experience that isn't always as easy to find in newer books. So that's really cool that you're getting into that market and serving those readers with what they're looking for. What are some of your favorite successes or milestones, or just some of your favorite moments so far from being a published author?
It was a really wonderful moment when The Star That Always Stays won the Christie Amplify Award last November at the Christie Awards. That was very cool. And also when it was named a Michigan Notable Book of 2023. So those two awards have meant a lot to me, and they were just such a surprise. And so those have been some of my favorite milestone moments. But there have been other really amazing moments as an author. I've had emails and messages from many different people who read and enjoyed my books and take the time to tell me about that, and it really just makes my day. It's just such a surprise and a delight every time. It means a lot to me that that people not only read the book but are willing to, send me an email to tell me how much they enjoyed it, and that's been really special.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when The Star That Always Stays won the Amplify Award. I was watching the Zoom presentation of the Christie Awards, and I wasn't that surprised that it won, but I did think that was that was a lot of fun. It was really cool to watch. Was that the first year that the Christies had introduced that award as well?
I think it was the second year,
Okay.
but it is very new.
Yeah, yeah. So that was just very neat. And the new copies of the books have the seal on it that says, I think it's the Michigan Notable Award that the more recent books have on the cover. So yeah, just so cool what you've been able to accomplish with this book and all the readers that you've been able to reach. And it seems like there's just always a new cool piece of news about where The Star That Always Stays is popping up. So all kinds of exciting things have happened with your two published books so far. What is next for you as an author?
Well, I recently announced that my third middle grade novel is coming out on June 3rd, 2025, and it's called The Blossoming Summer. And it's the story of a girl named Rosemary who lives in London at the beginning of World War II. And she goes to live with her grandmother in Wisconsin, and Rosemary discovers for the first time that she has Ojibwe heritage, and I'm very excited about the book. Um, it just has so many elements that I'm really excited about, and I just can't wait to be able to share it with readers.
Well, now I'm excited about it too because one, British main character, two, World War II, and three, I think it's really neat that you have woven the Ojibwe heritage into each of your books, but in a different way each time. So I'm looking forward to reading about this character discovering that she has that heritage when she didn't know that before. I think that will be an interesting, different angle on a topic that you've written about previously, but not in quite this way. So that sounds really cool.
Well, thank you.
Where can readers find these books and find out more about you?
Yes, so you can find me on Instagram at Anna Rose Writer, or you can join my email list, which you can find either on my Instagram bio link or just look at my website, AnnaRoseJohnson.com. You can join my email list from there too. And my website is where I have my bookish blog, so that's something else that people can check out if they want to.
Awesome. And I just came up with another impromptu question, which is if readers are looking for more books similar to yours, if they like that classic middle grade book type of story, what are some other books that you would recommend to them? Because I know that you are really good at recommending other books with that similar feel. So what are some of your favorites to recommend?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I have been recommending a couple of middle grade historical novels lately. One would be What the Moon Said by Gail Rosengren. That one's set in Wisconsin in the 1930s, and it's quite good. Another book set in the 30s that I enjoyed a lot would be My Name is Rachel by Patricia Riley Giff. That one is really good. So those two I have been recommending a lot because it's the kind of historical fiction that I like and that I write as well, which is you have the historical backdrop, but the plot of the story, the characters, really is what takes central stage. So yeah, those are two books that I would recommend for people who have read mine.
Awesome. That's great. And I did put your website in the description to this video. So if you would like to check out Anna Rose's website, then you can find that in the description. Just click the link there. I will also be putting a link in the description soon to other author interviews that I have done. So if you enjoyed this interview and you would like to hear more interviews like this, I will put a link in the description for you to be able to find a whole playlist of similar interviews. If you'd like to see future interviews that I do, you can subscribe to my channel so that you won't miss those. Anna Rose, it's been great to talk with you today. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we hop off?
Yeah, I don't think anything particular, just that I'm just very excited for my next middle grade novel, and I hope that everyone will check it out. I think that it's going to be really fun to have a book releasing at the beginning of summer, since it is a summertime book. So I think it's going to be cool.
Yeah, that's perfect. Well, awesome. That is very exciting. Thank you for sharing about your new book and everything that you shared about your previous books as well. It was great to chat with you today, and I will talk to you later.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was really a lot of fun.
You're welcome.